Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode, and I'm absolutely thrilled today to have Kristy Grant-Hart. And Kristy, first of all, welcome to the pod. And could you tell our listeners when you became a part of Diligent?
Absolutely, Tom. I love being on with you. This is terrific for me. Diligent acquired my company, Spark Compliance, in the first week in February. Second week of February, we came public with it. Everybody found out. I am now the vice president and head of compliance advisory services. So we're providing full-scale consulting on everything from third-party management to what to do with your anti-bribery program, monitoring, training, policy, code of conduct creation. And we're helping Diligent continue to build their compliance software to be best in class and also to really respond to the needs of the environment and the compliance officers.
Kristy, as you and our listeners know, in late January, Donald Trump issued an executive order suspending FCPA investigations and enforcement, instructing the Department of Justice to review all prior guidelines and enforcement actions, and within 6 to 12 months, come up with whatever the new proposals are going to be. Many compliance professionals have asked the question, what do we do now? So I wanted to start with that question and either what you're counseling your clients on, or what are the questions that you are getting, which are along the lines of what do we do now?
Tom, I think that it's really important to try to stay the course. And I will say that I did a webinar with Diligent maybe a week ago about every single area of compliance, what to do next. And we did a poll question to the audience and said, how is your program changing in response to these pronouncements by the Trump administration? And 100% of that audience said it wasn't changing at all. So I think to a certain degree, there has been good messaging, both from our community, but also from boards, that this is a blip, that we already are involved in so many areas of compliance that aren't just bribery areas, with trade sanctions, modern slavery, antitrust, conflicts, investigations, that yes, the FCPA is important. However, talking to people about the state attorneys general who are going to be continuing enforcement of state laws. We've got the UK Bribery Act, which of course is able to be enforced from bribes throughout the world. France, we have a new UK, Swiss, and French task force that is going after bribery as a joint group. So I think that from the bribery-specific perspective, talking about the fact that the FCPA was never the only game in town, and Europe responds to what America is doing, and that vacuum is going to be filled. I really, truly believe that it will, especially for multinational companies. There's a whole lot of value in not paying bribes.
So not only is there a whole lot of value in not paying bribes, I think both of us have been clear in our messaging that all of these other countries not only still have the laws on the books, but now we've seen a uptick, or at least a attempt to jointly investigate these. But let's really maybe step away from the strict legal requirements and talk about things from the business perspective, because I know you are great at helping compliance officers understand if it doesn't increase business value, you're not likely to get funding for it. So maybe the topic of consistency, because that's one theme I've heard you consistently talk about over the years I've known you. Could you tell us about why consistency may be even more important in Q1 into Q2 of 2025 than ever?
The fact of the matter is, there is such a focus from a regulatory perspective on consistency and approach. There are two things we hear all the time: taking a risk-based approach and consistency in execution. So if you were to have an issue, when you don't have consistency in execution and can't point to your systems working consistently, you end up with a cloud over you that basically says, why weren't you consistent in this? And if the answer is, well, because the Trump administration decided that FCPA wasn't important, that is not a good look. You also want the business to understand that continuity of process and consistency in process is what's expected of them, and not giving them the opportunity to think about how we shouldn't be doing this anymore or it doesn't matter anymore. But more than anything, that consistency is what gives the program credibility. And I think that it's really important not to interrupt that.
In terms of that consistency, one of the things I've heard at actually a couple of conferences is things along the lines of, I'm still getting 60 to 90 to 100 emails a day asking for questions. I still have to have a place of psychological safety to create not just a speak up culture, but a listen up culture. I still have to remind middle managers part of your role is to be our first line of intake, but also response. And so all of the things that go into a best practices compliance program are still need to be maintained, monitored, and approved or improved as appropriate.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is, it's not just about regulatory response. Internal investigations can take up enormous amounts of time. Reputational risk continues to exist outside of whatever's happening with the regulatory environment. And so I think that we lose sight of the fact that it isn't just regulatory, it's also the cost of lawyers, the cost of morale, the cost of people not feeling like the company is doing the right thing. And look, we're in a period of a lot of chaos. I mean, things literally change every few hours. Especially with the tariffs coming in, coming out, will they, won't they? I have never seen compliance officers going to Washington to lobby their senators, their congresspeople, and it's happening. I know three that are there. One now. Who sends the compliance officers? You send the lobbyists, right? But we're at the point where we have to use everything in our power to try to protect our industries. When you have that kind of chaos, we have seen over and over again that fraud increases and people are more able to justify in their head conflicts of interest response. So between those two things, those are business imperatives. Fraud is a business imperative on bottom line, and conflicts of interest can easily be so too. So in this period, we need to be able to make sure that the speak up culture is in place, that we have good investigations protocols, and that we're able to communicate with our folks that, communication about speak up, non-retaliation hotline and doing the right thing continue to be important to the company.
Kristy, one of the reasons that, frankly, I was excited for Spark to partner or go with Diligent was you brought a service that Diligent really didn't have, which was the services part of compliance. I was wondering if you could say a few words about this wedding of a company well known for their technological prowess and products with you and your team's expertise around delivering these services and why and how that can be such a powerful tool for the compliance professional.
Software is necessary and fantastic. Understanding how to use the software in a way that will maximally make your program operational in a way the business can use it specifically, but also to understand how to do your maybe multi-year roadmaps, what you need to focus on in your risk assessment, how to deliver it. Those things aren't all done with software. And one of the challenges we saw when we were not part of Diligent was we would see people buy both Diligent and other types of software and essentially say, it doesn't work. And the answer was typically not, it doesn't work. The answer was, it doesn't work the way you've implemented it for your business. So a huge amount of what we're going to be doing is helping people to understand how to make their business's compliance program work, how to plan, how to use metrics and monitoring, how to make good readable policies, how to make compelling communications, what to do in your investigations, and then how to take the data that's coming out of these wonderful pieces of software and make it compelling to the board and make it compelling to the C-suite. So our experience in-house, nearly all my consultants have been in-house, and our decades of doing this will help compliance officers themselves in order to make their programs better, more efficient, and better run. So the marriage of the software that is allowing for this data to be collected, allowing for third-party information to be collected and thought through, the policy management, conflicts management, all of the learning products, those with great advice will make your program tremendously more effective.
Kristy, you touched on other types of sanctions. You mentioned trade sanctions. I want to talk about forced labor, trafficking. We have export control sanctions. We had designation of cartels in Mexico as foreign terrorist organizations, bringing an entire new level of risk and responsibility to U.S. companies doing business in Mexico and, frankly, along the border and Mexican and perhaps South American companies as well. Could you maybe highlight some of the key issues you're seeing or hearing about on those different types of compliance as well?
Sure. Trade sanctions are changing faster and faster. And that is one of the biggest challenges, I think, in the compliance community right now is just trying to keep up. you have to have good software that's doing screening in order to do it's impossible. There's very few things that are impossible to run without software. That's one of them. So you really need to be able to be responding and watching the news and watching what's happening from geopolitical standpoints. But I want to talk about that modern slavery response. To me, it is so under the radar for so many companies. And the reason it has been is because there haven't been tremendously powerful laws behind this, basically of transparency laws like the UK Act, where you have to publish a statement that literally can say, we do nothing, hugs and kisses company. And there's no punishment for that. And there's no expectation in Australia and the California Transparency Act. And so what we're seeing now, though, is a shift. So Canada now has a Modern Slavery Transparency Act that has up to $250,000 in fines if you get it horribly wrong. And with the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act that the United States has had, it has over $3 billion of goods that have been stopped at the border. That is real money. And I think we're going to see an expansion of that. We're also seeing the EU bringing in its Forced Labor Act, where no products will be able to go into the EU bloc if they have an expectation or they understand that forced labor has been in the supply chain. You also have the transparency regulations and directives from the CSRD, right? The European Act there, and the CSDDD, right? The Corporate Responsibility Acts that are happening. There is an omnibus proposal to shift some of those back, but they're not going away. So when you see all of these things happening at once, it's really important. More and more of our clients are saying, my customers are requiring me to tell them what we're doing. I need to do something. Kristy, help me. But I think that the business imperative around modern slavery response, human trafficking response, understanding your supply chain is more and more important, and something that customers and clients need to invest in to be in the modern world.
Kristy, we started off with the question of sort of what to do now. And as we move towards the end, I want to maybe refocus on that question in terms of, is now the time to sit back and do nothing? Is now the time to look at your program and see what are the key elements? What is the one part of the program that support the business? Are there areas of high risk we're not looking at? And let me just throw in one I know will be near and dear to your heart. Have you looked at the number of power stations close to your nearest airport to see if, and Kristy's smiling because she lived in the United Kingdom for several years. And I'm, of course, speaking of Heathrow Airport being literally shut down and it affecting air traffic on a worldwide basis. Are you thinking through those things, or should you think through those things?
I don't know what you can do really about power stations near your airport other than move. But I think that right now it's never the time. To answer your question, Tom, it's never the time to do nothing. Sitting back and doing nothing is not one of the options for compliance officers. I think right now it's really important to focus on outcomes and future risk as opposed to activity. One of the things I see that makes compliance officers ineffective and people not paying attention to them is, especially at board and senior reporting conversations, where it's, here's my training records, here's our investigations, here's what I've done with policies, here's what. No, it's all about, how do I strategically help you understand the risk that's coming down, whether it's from the Forced Labor Act, whether it's from FLIPA, whether it's from trade sanctions, whether it's from the fraud risk around chaotic periods. My job is to help you, business, to understand how I can strategically assist you in forward-looking risk, especially in times where backward-looking activity is even less important than it was previously.
Kristy, that seems like a great note for us to end this podcast on. I wanted to thank you for taking the time to visit with me. And of course, I look forward to continuing this conversation.
Thank you, Tom.
Compliance Podcast Network. Start your mornings with daily compliance news, quick, sharp updates on the top compliance and ethics stories in under 5 minutes every morning in Compliance Podcast Network. Because compliance never sleeps. Need practical advice fast? Check out Compliance Tip of the Day. One actionable idea to level up your program. Short and sweet, every day on Compliance Podcast Network. Got 10 minutes? We've got the week's top 10 stories. 10 for 10 brings you the big compliance headlines. Fast, fun, and focused. Every Saturday on Compliance Podcast Network. And don't miss the Sunday Book Review, where compliance meets culture through must-read books and big ideas every Sunday in Compliance Podcast Network. Whether you're in the office, on a walk, or commuting, stay smart, stay ethical, stay tuned. Only on the Compliance Podcast Network, available wherever you listen to podcasts.